This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Your Purpose, Your Power, a journey to authenticity. Today, I want to welcome you to this program as we are collaborating with Cleveland 13 News. I'm your host, Karen Hale, and I'm honored here to have this space with extraordinary individuals. And when you meet my guest, I think you will believe she is extraordinary. Some are from the Cleveland area and some are from beyond. Over the past 13 years, podcasting has been more than a career. It's been a path in reclaiming my own authenticity before that first recording. I spent years chasing my image of who I wanted to be or who I should be. But the moment I introduced my first guest, I knew something had shifted. I found my voice and, more important, my purpose. This series is about meaningful connections, mutual growth, and the beauty of learning from others. My guest today is Katie Baker. I will have her bio in the show notes. I'm not going to read it to you because I think it's better to come directly from Katie. So, Katie, tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so my name's Katie Baker. I reside in Boise, and I just felt really compelled based on my own journey to write a book. So I wrote When the Universe Holds Your Hair Back. So I'm a new author. This is my first book. And so I have been sort of treading this new territory as I navigate healing from a childhood traumatic past that I was in denial about, and then really reclaiming the lost versions of myself and stepping into this new role of who I am now.
So, how did you finally realize that who you were before was not authentically who you want to be now?
Yeah. Well, it took some interventions from family members, that's for sure. But what I was doing, it was all about actually the act of doing. I was being the best version of a mother that I thought I could be, sort of over mothering, overworking. I was successful from all outside appearances. I looked like I had it together. I founded a nonprofit and it was going really well. And there was a secret double life, though, that I was living. I was really drinking too much, not getting drunk per se, but just drinking every night, sort of sitting in my room by myself. And I just found myself really lost. And so what happened was that my children and my husband could see that I was hurting. And I was pretty determined to break the generational trauma cycles that had weighed so heavy on my life. Uh, and so I was really determined to be the best mother I could be. But when my son was 18, my daughter was 20, I sort of started falling apart. I started unraveling. And so one night at a fire pit, I was sitting there with my son after a Labor Day family reunion where we're known to be big drinkers in our family. I was probably 15 beers deep. We'd been drinking all day, coupled with energy drinks so we could stay awake. And my son sat down next to me and he was not drinking or anything. And he was 18, but still was not drinking. And he sat down next to me and said, Mom, I can see that you are really hurting and you've had a really rough childhood. And I think it's really important for you to spend a year on yourself and to heal. And we love you and we have your back, but I encourage you to spend a year on yourself. And so that's what really prompted this experience. And my daughter had had a conversation with me a month prior, but not as direct as what my son had expressed. And it really set me off on a healing journey.
I think it's interesting because my son, who at the time was 22, 23 years old, um, he noticed that I was falling into a deep depression.
Mm,
And he cornered me and said, "Hey, mom, you take care of me, you take care of dad, you take care of your mother. When are you going to take care of you?" And I looked at him and I said, "No, I'm okay." He said, no, you're
Mm,
not. And he kept saying it over and over again. How interesting it is that we have both have sons who could see in us that we needed to be acknowledged
mm,
and given the opportunity to get
mm.
better.
Totally.
Um, I was amazed, and I'm grateful that your son did that for you as well.
Yeah.
So you went through a number of traumas growing up, and some people, as we get older and we talk about those traumas, they try to say, oh, just, forget it. You're okay today. That was
Mhm,
yesterday. But you just don't forget those things. In fact, they can creep up on you at any time.
mhm.
So what did you do for that year to find yourself to try to put the demons at bay?
Yeah, really good question. And I think reflecting back, I had never dealt with those experiences. As I write in the book, our mantra growing up, our cowboy creed, as I called it, was to buck up. You just keep going. That's the past. You can handle this. Don't even think, don't be weak. There was all these signals in my family, and I knew that I was not working. It was not working. I was emotionally bankrupt, very much so. And so, what I did is I researched in particular for myself. Um, I talked to my son and suggested maybe I'll do talk therapy again. He's like, Mom, you've already tried that. So, I had tried a lot of different methods to help heal from these wounds that were definitely impacting me because I had denied them. I had not given them a voice. And so I started researching. It was Michael Pollan's book came out, um, and I had read these stories and started watching documentaries on the impacts of therapeutic psychedelics in terms of healing. So very different from, a fun sort of, experience of you think of like the 60s or 70s. It was just, I decided to embark on a journey using therapeutic psychedelics with trained facilitators to really address the things that I was unable or unwilling to face in my own life.
So, how do the psychedelics help you? Do they sort of create a vulnerability, or how do you trust them? I guess is also what I'm asking.
Yeah, yeah, good question because it's scary,
Yeah.
right? It's very much it feels like in my family and sometimes in America, drinking is a known substance. We know it, right? It is trustworthy, I guess, if you will. I'm going to put that in quotation marks because it's a known entity, right? It's a coping mechanism. But for me in particular, with alcohol, it was a numbing agent. It was something that I could use to deny what was actually happening. I wouldn't have to think about it if I got, drank too many beers or glasses of wine or anything. And so I was scared. I'm going to be totally honest. I was really nervous about taking these um, different medicines to heal myself. However, I did know that the research was there that supported that these particular medicines from the earth have great potential to help people address some of the things that the conscious doesn't want to even bring to light. And so I decided that I would research it and go with trained facilitators and interviewed trained facilitators and had to travel out of the country quite a bit during that year. However, I think that as you work alongside, like I went to my first ceremony and what I mentioned in that one in particular, I didn't really cry for myself ever. If someone else was crying, I would get emotional or have deep empathy for their experience, but I never showed that type of tenderness to myself. And what happened in the first ceremony, I went in with such trepidation and fear because it was the unknown. However, when I left there, I had not, actively cried, but tears were just rolling down my cheeks for hours and hours. And I realized that was just like a cracking open. There was something that happened during that experience where I could look at the experiences that had happened to me with a new pair of glasses. It wasn't the same thing that, the same way that I would look at it, almost as if I was damaged goods, but look at really the grievances those people, those stepfathers had done to me with real compassion for myself, which was not commonplace, unfortunately, in my life.
So you were abused.
Mhm.
Did others in your immediate family know? Did your mother know? Did your grandparents know? Did anybody else know this was happening to you?
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, in our family, we were really good at keeping secrets and keeping our struggles secret. So there was a couple instances that I can think of that, I was sexually abused when there was no doubt that it happened. I went to my mother. We immediately went to the police department. And then, of course, unfortunately, there were all these signs that sort of led to this discovery. Um, that the signs were there all along. Um, and so I was really fortunate because I know a lot of sexual abuse survivors in particular don't really have a safe haven to share this information with. But I was taken away from that situation immediately. And also, there was a stepfather that physically, verbally, he was horrible, emotionally abused both my brother and I for years. And because my mom was working so hard, we just kept our mouths shut. And there was also a fear of him, really. So I would say that probably people had an idea, but we were really good at sort of hiding what was going on underneath the surface.
Well, and many do
Hmm.
hide because even though it shouldn't be our shame, we take it on as our personal shame. Um, I was molested by a doctor,
Hmm.
and my mother-in-law had taken me to the doctor's office. And when I walked out, she looked at me and she said, "What's wrong?" I just shook my head, didn't want to say anything there. He was right behind me, so it was like, what was I going to say? And we got in the car, and I knew she was safe because my
Hmm.
mother-in-law would have talked to me about anything. And I told her, and she looked at me and she said, "He should be ashamed." Those were her first words. "He should be ashamed." And I said, "No, I am. I let him do it." She said, "No, you didn't let him do it. He did it to you." And I'm so grateful for her saying those words to me right away
Hmm.
because it turned my thinking very quickly around. You know, yeah, I got abused. It was not my fault. However, if I was a young child and that had happened, I don't know how I would have felt, even if somebody would have told me it wasn't my fault. But you got away, you eventually got married,
Hmm.
you have your own family. Do you have any idea why it took you until your daughter and your son tried to open your eyes, why you didn't want to do this on your own?
Hmm. I was just in such denial. I had such shame that haunted me. Um, it's hard work, right? It's
Yeah.
hard work. And then I think even though people do these heinous acts to children, um, in our society and really across the world, unfortunately, but I think that oftentimes there is a deep-seated shame that associates with these experiences because we don't really talk about it. And so we just hold that into our, tiny little childlike bodies, all that shame, and then it comes with us into adulthood, right? One thing that I was really grateful for is one of the chapters in particular. I named it Tough Broads and Rainier Beer to talk about the women in my line and the ancestors that in our experiences, right, that made these tough women um, be able to cope and survive, right? It's a survival mechanism. However, with me in particular, I wasn't planning on having children. I was married, I had a good job, I had graduated from college, I'd done all the things. I was so scared that if I had children, that I would not be a good mom because of my past. And so, when both my husband and I had, not the greatest childhoods. But when I got pregnant with my daughter, my husband and I looked at each other and just said, we are absolutely going to break the cycles. We're going to raise them in the same home. We are going to try to do everything. So I was the type of parent that volunteered at their schools, was very involved with their friends' parents, sort of all the things. And I was very grateful for that experience. But there was these things that I had yet to contend with that were sitting on my shoulders the entire time. Um, and what I noticed as they got older, and then there was this fear around who am I without these children, right? And I kind of knew subconsciously I'm going to have to deal with this. And so everything got progressively worse in terms of overdoing, working, over drinking, all overeating, all the things. And so that's sort of what led me to, okay, we got a little bit of a mess on our hands.
So many of us as women, whether we've had a wonderful upbringing or we've had to deal with abuse, um, many of us just want to be the most perfect mother.
Mm,
And it's interesting. I certainly tried that. Um, and I didn't think I was a great mother. Um, my oldest son is going to be 50. My youngest son is going to be 35. And I realize now I was a good mother,
mm,
but I didn't know it back then. I kept thinking, I looked at other mothers out there and what they were doing, thinking, well, why aren't I more like her? Or why can't I, do things the way the other one does? And I got angry with myself to the point that I thought I wasn't doing anything for either one of my boys. Now
mm,
they tell me, you know, they're grateful for when I got involved and when I did step away. So I think we're hard on ourselves no matter what our background is.
mm,
And there is no perfect mother. And so for anybody listening, if you're struggling with perfection, throw it out the window. Um, you have to start being good to yourself.
mm,
I think that probably was the hardest part that you were going through, Katie, is being good to yourself. You're being good to your kids, to your husband,
mm.
and hoping that maybe you would catch some of that goodness.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's what I talk about in the book, that striving for perfection, that elusive perfection. I thought in some way that would make everything go away. That would make everything right. So volunteering, being involved in my community, being involved with friends and the kids' lives and doing everything um, to the best of my ability really just took a toll on me, right? And was an illusion. It wasn't the truth. And so I think that that's what I really gleaned from this is that self-care. And, my son's words in particular really brought that home, like take care of yourself. And I have a family that is really supportive of me being the best version of myself to myself. But took me needing to realize that and really this year to heal, to get to that place where like I've been chasing something that does not exist and will not make things right.
And so many of us are chasing that tail that's in front of us, thinking that if I can just grab onto it, you know, my life is going to be perfect. And the
Mhm.
reality of it is, we're the only ones that can make it close to perfect. But if
Hmm.
we're not taking care of ourselves, we're depleted. And so that doesn't even help the others around us. So you went through psychedelic therapy, and it's interesting. I was having a conversation with my husband about psychedelic therapy the other day because I had somebody who wanted to come on and talk about it. But after I did some research, that was not the person who I wanted to come on and talk about it.
Hmm.
Because I didn't feel that they were using it in the best possible ways. But you said at first you were nervous about it. Once you started on it, did you feel that you still had some control? Because that's one of the things that some of us fear. If I try this, I'm going to lose control, and everybody else around me is going to be able to control me.
Yeah, yeah. I too was very concerned about losing control. For me, for example, I knew exactly how much to drink, so I didn't lose control. I never was like that type of person to get too drunk at a party or anything like that. I mean, certain situations, it was maybe different, like family reunions where you're around a crowd. But however, I was very concerned. What am I going to do? Am I going to lose my mind? Am I going to be recognizable to my family? What if I change too much and I don't have connections with them? What's going to happen? Because you oftentimes hear, for example, that people have these experiences, they're really profound, and then they start changing things in their life, for example. When I did the ceremonies, I felt in control. Absolutely. And I was in a safe space, right? They talk about safe set and setting. That's really critical to find providers, and that can be a challenge too, because there's a mixed bag now, and really, this psychedelic ceremonies, people really have to be discerning. And so I felt very cared for and nurtured and loved, and I didn't, lose my mind. I didn't freak out. I didn't change anything right away. What really happened was that I would go home and I would work with a therapist and integrate what had come to me during that ceremony. Sometimes I would just cry. It was really hard because it felt these particular medicines, I think that this is one modality for me that helped me heal and view the world, myself, my community in a new way. It really changed my life from night to day, saved my life. And that's actually why I wrote the book. I don't think these particular modalities are for everyone, that's for sure. And I think we have to be really discerning in terms of the set and setting. However, I felt really loved and cared for during this experience. And it was brutal. It was hard. I talk about, in the first chapter, this is raw, painful stuff, but the end result or the process itself is so beautiful that it's worthy, at least for me, for sharing. And also, I feel like we're not sharing these stories or being really honest about our childhood experiences. And I sense that the world, or the people I engage with are really hurting. They're really scared. They're really sad. And I think if we have a little bit more honest conversations about not only the use of therapeutic psychedelics, which was really scary to share. I did this relatively privately, but also that these healing paths that are really hard stories that we need to just be honest about with the end goal of transformation, right? And truth.
Absolutely. So, as you were going through therapy, is that when you got the idea for the book, or how did the book come about?
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting because actually what happened is that I would be in a ceremony and I would hear from, I feel like something outside of myself, you need to write the book. You need to write the book. And it happened enough times that I was like, I think I'm supposed to write a book. I finally caught on to, probably 10 messages, and it would be in that ceremony space. And so I just thought, I think I'm supposed to write a book. I met with popular author here locally and shared one or two of my blogs and just said, I don't know. I keep hearing this message. I'm meant to write a book. And so he came back and said, look, you got something here to write a book. I think you should write a book. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And, when you're on your right path, all the doors open up. And so that's actually what happened. Somebody just said, hey, I'd love to edit it. Hey, I'd love to proofread it. I'd love to design the cover. That kind of thing. The pieces all fell in place. So,
Well, and I think what is interesting, once we start becoming more in tune with who we are and
mhm,
what is important to us, our purpose, okay? Our purpose creates that power for us that, and if you would have told me this 15 years ago, I would have told you, you're crazy. The only way that you're going to be able to meet your purpose, you have to have money, you have to have all the right connections. And one of the things that I learned was I wasn't really meeting, I didn't have the money.
mhm,
My family agreed, okay, start your podcast, do whatever you want to do. But through that, I started meeting people like you and so many others that came into my life and came into my life with something that was beneficial. And it's interesting when you start to open up how life can change and look beautiful. You can see the sunshine on a cloudy day. And, um, living in Northeast Ohio, we have plenty of cloudy days in the wintertime. And I always, will start out by telling people, I can see the sun. It's above the clouds. You may not be able to see it, but I know it's there. And that
mhm.
sunshine gives me the energy that I need.
Yeah.
So, what is the name of the book? So we can all go find it.
Yeah. It's called When the Universe Holds Your Hair Back.
The universe holds your hair back. And where can we find it?
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Spark, and it's on audiobook, all different formats, ebook, paperback, hardback. But in terms of the audiobook, it's on Amazon and Spotify.
It is terrific. So, what are your plans going forward to keep
Yeah.
following your purpose?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna lean into this right now. For example, I'm just working into slowness and what doors are opening up for me right now. I have a business that I started, Peace and Fire Healing. I'm working with others that are going through transformative processes. I found out through this experience in particular that I have intuitive abilities. Who knew? I had no idea. And so I've been working on really strengthening that in my personal business so that my goal is how many people can I help and how can we make an impact in the world? And so that's what I'm doing now.
Well, that's what this podcast is all about. And I'm so glad that we connected through Podmatch. All your information will be in the show notes. So hopefully everybody's going to go out and either get the book on audio so they can listen to it as they're traveling around, or they're actually going to read a book. Don't remember the last time I read a book. I keep listening to books, but get the information and get the help we all need. Katie, thank you for joining me today. It's been a
Th-
pleasure.
Thank you so much. So great meeting you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.